Good morning, everybody. It's another episode of the Keep Going podcast, Athletes Shining a Light on Mental Health. I got Steph Nichols in the building. Steph, what is going on early this Sunday morning?
What's up, Pat? Thanks for having me on.
Of course, excited to be here. I've been thinking about kind of how I'd intro you all week, and I think it's an easy one. You know, when you kind of meet someone and you know they'd be good for the podcast, that's kind of what I thought when I met you. So talk about why you wanted to come on the podcast this morning.
Yeah, obviously I'm good friends with your brother, Adam, of course.
Yes, shout him out.
Always. He talks very highly of you and everything that you do. So obviously just hearing about the podcast, I was like, oh, that's awesome. But then obviously I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So I deal with student athletes all day, every day. They come to me for a lot of stuff, whether it be related to their sport or not. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of thrown into it every single day. So I can kind of talk on that.
No doubt. And as a student athlete, and obviously as a strength and conditioning coach and everything that comes with that, I'm aware there's a lot of hats that you wear. I agree. I think this is a perfect opportunity to come on and shine some light on that. In the strength and conditioning coaching world, what are you running into in 2025? Like what's going on with student athletes? Kind of enlighten me, because I haven't been in college coaching since 2021. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I currently work at College of DuPage, and it's a junior college. So it is a lot of kids that are coming there for a year or two to hopefully go on and play somewhere else. So there's a lot of anxieties and struggles with that, of them making the right decision of where they want to go, what they want to do with their lives, if they want to continue playing their sport or not.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. And something else that I hear a lot about is when our athletes are injured, they have a hard time dealing with being on the sideline, especially when they're players that are used to getting every single minute of every game.
Of course.
So it's a lot of back and forth between myself and the athletic trainers, obviously rehabbing them physically, but also mentally, and realizing that they can come out on the other side a better player and a better person. So I get into that a lot about like, hey, you're going to learn a lot during this time, even though if it feels like the worst time of your life because you can't play your sport. So yeah, I think those are the two biggest things that I hear day to day.
No, beautifully said. And once again, like I said earlier, like you wear a lot of caps. You're working on the physical side, getting them bigger, faster, stronger, but you're also working on the mental side when they go through those setbacks, when they're having those days of doubt. When you have an athlete that are having those doubts, what do you do primarily on the mental health side to help that athlete? I know it's not cookie cutter, but just for an example.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for just like telling my athletes, like, I see you and I hear you. I get
Love
it.
that.
I've been there. I myself dealt with some injuries in college, and you have a lot of people like, oh, like thinking about you, hope everything goes okay. Like, you'll be back in no time, and hearing that stuff is kind of like you need it, but at the same time, sometimes you need a little bit deeper. And sometimes all it takes is one person being like, hey, like, it's relatable. I've been there. I see you and we can get through it. So I like offer that most often. And then I also ask like, hey, do you want to talk about it? And if they're not ready to talk about it, they're not ready to talk about it. And then I just keep my door open, and usually they trickle their way back in after I tell them like I'm here for them. So just offering like a safe space to talk about things when they need it.
I think that open door policy is so key.
Yeah.
I think even if it's hey, just come sit in my office and do your homework, or like just come sit in the office and talk about like something good. Like I think that's so key, and I think coaching staffs that have those resources and someone like yourself, that gives you an advantage, not only in the game setting but in life, honestly. So I'm glad to hear you're doing that. That's awesome.
For sure.
You mentioned as a former athlete yourself that went through some injuries. Talk about younger Steph. Like, when did you start saying, okay, I'm going to play college athletics? It's kind of shining through of what you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely played a handful of sports growing up, but soccer was kind of always the one that stuck. I played travel soccer growing up, and then in high school I played varsity, and then I also managed the boys team. So once I got to high school, I kind of zoned in on soccer, and that was all I really did. So yeah, I think high school I realized that I wanted to play in college, and it was just everything I did. Every single day I was playing soccer, doing something for soccer. And then on the injury side, like as every soccer player, I had sprained my ankles a million times, and I was always the kid that didn't want to rest. I would go to the training room and basically ask for a band-aid and would just play through it.
How ironic that is now. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the worst because I was that kid, and now I'm the person telling athletes not to do that because it just makes things worse throughout time. And then in college, I had a bit of a back injury that I still kind of deal with now. And that one's obviously a lot more serious because that affects day-to-day life. And as much as it's the worst thing in the world, I again, find a lot of relatability with athletes that also deal with similar back injuries. So me learning through like my own injuries and how I can rehab and how I can feel good helps a lot when it comes to helping other athletes that deal with similar things. So yeah, I was just kind of the rough and tough kid that wanted to go play soccer, whether I was in pain or not. So it's it's a difficult conversation sometimes being like, "Hey, I get that you want to keep playing, but maybe we give it a week so that we can come back stronger," type thing.
Right. Yeah, and I think he knows already. My fiance obviously was a Division I athlete on the softball side, and something that always stuck with me was the recovery of it all. Like I was a D3 athlete, but I don't know. I don't think I recovered that well when I was there for my 4 years. Talk about the importance of recovery, not only on the physical side but the mental side, because I think athletes need to hear it from someone like you.
Yeah, for sure. And I talk a lot about it at work is like most athletes don't sleep enough, right?
Right.
They're busy with school, with working, with their sport, or like outside life and hanging out with their friends. So definitely sleep is number one, but also nutrition and hydrating. And a lot of times people are like, oh, I need to work harder. I need to work harder, especially when they're injured. They have to do, a little bit more to get back from their injury, but most times they need to do a lot less to just give their body time to do its thing because the body heals itself. So, yes, there's always more rehab and more things that we can do for injuries, but a lot of times it's sleep and eating well and hydrating and, doing all the little things that aren't fun. Um, so, yeah, again, I wasn't that athlete. I was also a D3 athlete. So, there was a lot of times where it was just go, go, go. We sometimes didn't have the resources to always get the best recovery, or we'd have games back to back or double headers. So, yeah, just prioritizing sleep and time for yourself.
No, I love that. And I think once again, working with athletes now out here in the Rockford area, a lot of simple, mundane, boring stuff is the stuff that has you hang banners in our facility, right? We see the college commitments. A lot of it is because the simple, how you do one thing is how you do everything kind of mantra. Talk about you as a player. I know we talked about a little bit about the injury, but like obviously being a D3 athlete, give me your D3 athlete pitch here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I obviously just went D3 because I wanted to play my sport, but I didn't want it to be my whole life.
Fair.
Definitely wanted to be able to focus on school and like have a social life and all those other things. Um, but I also dealt with having a couple of different head coaches while I was in college. So that was something that was pretty tough for me, but I think it made me a really good leader. I was a captain my junior and my senior year. And in between those coaching changes, it was kind of like someone needed to step up, and me and my co-captains at the time kind of just took over the team within those gaps.
Mhm.
But yeah, on the field, I was just locked in all the time. I was having fun out there, but I was took it very serious. Like I mentioned, I was kind of just rough and tough. I try to run through as many people as I could
Yeah.
physically, but also just like being that positive influence on the field and off the field. When I was on the sideline because of injury, I was doing my best to see things from a coach's point of view. But then same thing on the field. Like I just always have coaches tell me like when you're on the field, it's like having a coach on the field because you do your job, but you also communicate and coach each other while you're playing.
No, no doubt. And this is exactly why I wanted to have you on. Like that's such a beautiful answer because even when you were at your lowest point on the sidelines or even on the field, kind of battling stuff still, you were someone that coaches leaned on. And I think every player needs that as a teammate. Every coach needs to kind of lean on players. That's a beautiful thing. I like that a lot. What I would say too, as we go on today, I want to talk about your athletes now, but kind of outside of the bigger, faster, stronger stuff. Talk about what you see from students in the academic side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think a lot of our student athletes that struggle getting to practice on time and getting to weights on time are also the student athletes that struggle in class. A lot of times it's either there's no in between, right? So it's the kids that show up 10 minutes early for lifts or for practice, and it's the kids that care more about their grades. So I think me harping on all the things that I do in the weight room, also leaving them with, hey, like make sure you go to class or do your homework tonight, go take 20 minutes for yourself, right? Like they hear all of the strength and conditioning stuff from me, but then they also hear like, hey, go hydrate or go eat something, make sure you go to class today. And obviously, I see athletes pretty much every day. So it's like I learn their schedule. I know which athletes are coming and going from class. They talk to me about when they're struggling in class. So I think it goes a long way for me. Hey, how'd your math test go? And they'll like sometimes look back and they're like, oh, you remember that I had a math test yesterday? And I'm
Amazing.
like, yeah, of course. So I
Amazing.
think, yeah, little stuff like that where obviously I stay in the weight room and that's my main job, but I try to connect as much as I can to learn more about what's going on outside of school, and obviously in the classroom because it all correlates. But I think a lot of times it's just creating those relationships and showing them that I actually care more than about how much they squat or bench,
Yeah.
and that goes a long way.
You're the definition of a stigma breaker. Like in a lot of facets of your life. Like you're not the normal strength and conditioning coach. I mean, I talked about my fiance earlier. She had an amazing strength and conditioning coach at Stony Brook that they all loved. Like it was almost like he was part of the team. I
Yeah.
can see that in your everyday life, the building of relationships, the choices that you make to keep them in your life and stay involved. Talk about the stigma of being, I don't know, a female in this field, because I know it's different. I know it's different because I'm just listening to you like this is amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I think two kind of sides that I want to talk about is on the female, like working with female athletes. It's great because they walk into the weight room. They might be a little bit nervous to get in there and they see another female and they take a deep breath. And I've like physically seen it sometimes where they're like walking in real timid and it's like a bunch of guys in the room and then they see me and they're like, oh, okay, yep, I'm going to her. So that's been really cool. I was never really one that was timid in the weight room, but I know it is very, very, very prevalent with female athletes. Especially when there's a bunch of guys being meatheads in there. So I think being a safe space for our female athletes and like teaching them that they have a space in the weight room. Everyone's there for the same reason, male or female. So I always tell them like, hey, take up space. Sometimes we have to share our space, and they're, oh well, the guys are over there, right? And it's like, cool, I'll walk over there with you. You're allowed to take up that space too. So that aspect is super cool. But that's also working with males athletes. Like obviously majority of the athletes I work with are male, especially with football. um, it takes me a little bit longer for them to like trust me and realize, okay, she knows what she's talking about, she has us. They're drawn to male coaches, I feel like, but it comes around and then they're like, oh yeah, Coach Steph's got me, like she knows what we're doing, she knows exactly, like she understands my sport. So I think that goes a long way too, like understanding every sport. And of course I don't know football as best as someone or another coach that has played it, but being able to like talk to athletes about their sport and their position is important. But then also like some of them just have like so much more respect for me because I'm a female. Like
Yeah,
they
I certainly do. Like I certainly do as a student athlete. Like I wish I would have had someone like yourself when I was at Oakton. I couldn't name my strength and conditioning coach by name at Oakton. Like that's a prime example. Like I'm sitting here thinking, I wish I would have had someone like you. And that's a big time compliment, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's cool just because like I said, it takes them a little bit longer, like, oh, she's a female, like, and that's another thing, and I tell them, like, hey, if you're squatting 315, I can't spot you. Find a teammate, but I'm gonna stand there and hype you up in other ways, right? Like, there's definitely like some physical, I don't want to say like weaknesses, but some physical things that I run in where it's like, hey, if someone's benching this much, like I'll try my best to deadlift it off your chest, but like, hey, let's find more hands. Like, there's definitely just different ways that I have to move through my job at times, but I don't really run into it very often. So yeah, and I think a lot of them like jump to have my back, and that's my favorite part of it. Like, yeah, the guys got my back.
Your face has changed several times during this conversation. Like during this primary like topic, like it's amazing to hear like, okay, Coach Steph's got your back. And I love how you believe in yourself. Like that's so powerful for like any female athletes and coaches that are listening today. Like I am so happy that you're talking about that because they need it some days. And we talk about the keep going mantra, and my fiance, I keep bringing her up. Like she's walked into gyms with me in Chicago and been like, I can't work out here. So like you're breaking a lot of those stereotypes and you're bringing female athletes into the conversation and say, hey, go take up 20 to 30 yards here. Let's dominate. I love that mantra. That's so good. So
Try
good.
my best.
I'm doing a fantastic job. I got to ask you though, we do have a preface of this podcast and it is the keep going moment. It's why we keep doing this. It's why I just had an athlete walk in wearing the hoodie and it just makes me so happy. Tell me your keep going moment. Someone that should have broke you down, put you to the floor that you got through.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. I was thinking about this because I knew you were gonna ask.
Never heard it before, yes. Okay. But
Um, and yeah, I don't really think I have like one specific moment. I definitely have a couple like that I look back and I'm like, okay, yeah, like that definitely tore me a little bit and I made it out on the other side. But I think my two biggest ones, and I kind of mentioned it, I had a couple different head coaches in college. So going away to college as a freshman and being recruited by a coach that you loved and primarily picked the school for, and then having them leave, like that was really hard. There was a lot of uncertainty of like, hey, like, am I going to be able to impress this next coach the way I impressed the last coach? And am I going to be able to be the leader that I am under this coach? And then having coaches come and go, like I said, I played for a coach my freshman year, a new coach my sophomore and junior year, and then a third coach my senior year. So that was really tough. But it was one of those things where it was like, I never really felt like, okay, well, this is going to steer me away from soccer or steer me to transfer, right? It was kind of like, hey, I'm going to find my girls, my teammates, and we're going to band together and we're going to get through it. And that's exactly what we did. There were times where I hated soccer. There were times where it felt super unfair that I committed to a school and to a coach, and then I had three different ones within my 4 years. But I think I realized that I wasn't there for a coach. I was there for myself and for my sport. So, yeah, I think that was part of it. And then another one for me, like, and I worked at Benedictine after I played there, and then leaving there was really hard for me.
Yeah.
That was my safe space. I worked there, and everyone knew me there. I knew everyone there. I felt very supported there. So, kind of taking the leap to leave there and take the job over at COD now, it was really hard, and it was a really hard transition. So, I think thinking back on like a keep going moment, that was one of them, just because I felt like I didn't have the confidence to move on from venue. And I just had people pushing me and reminding me that I can do it. So went ahead and did it, and here we are. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm so happy those people did. Um, because when I sit on the podcast this morning and hundreds of listeners will feel the same way, it's like I can just the confidence you have now, it's incredible. And I think it's a lot of it is because you took that leap. You got comfortable with the uncomfortable. I hate the cliche, but like you decided I'm going to make the leap. And I think that's so empowering and inspiring for a lot of athletes that will listen, a lot of coaches. I do have to ask you though, when you were going through the coaching changes, I work in the recruiting world. I've been doing this for the last 10 years, and all I hear about is the transfer portal and the grass isn't always greener. And if I go here, I can just transfer. And it's like, yeah, but there's commitments here. Talk a little bit more about why you stayed with all that stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure. I Something that was really important to me when I was picking a school in the first place coming out of high school was like 100% I was going to go play soccer and I was going to have a good relationship with the coach. But I don't even remember who it was, but someone told me, like, look at the school that you're going to pick, and yes, pick for soccer and pick for your major and pick all for all these things. But also think about the side where if you got injured or the soccer team got canceled, deleted, right? Like, would you still be happy there? And I
Yes.
tell recruits that, and I tell athletes that all the time now. Um, and I loved Benedictine, whether soccer was there or not. It was close to home. It was a smaller campus, all those things. And I think freshman year, when that first coach did leave, like I had already made a bunch of my best friends. And it was like, well, they're still here. So one coach might be leaving, but I still have my athletic trainers, my strength and conditioning coaches, the ADs that were super helpful, and my friends. So yeah, it was like that split second of like, well, crap, what am I going to do? But then it was like, nah, like this is my school, this is my team, this is my program, and we're gonna like do our best to stay loyal to it. And whoever comes in to lead us is gonna have to like earn that spot.
Yeah, perspective. That's what a captain does.
Yeah.
When, you don't, and I was a captain at Rockford, and it was a privilege. When shit hits the fan, especially in competition or off the field or in different settings in the community, you stand up and you support it. You have that beautiful perspective, which you could have easily punted and went somewhere else. Like I'm glad that you stayed, and that's how you meet Adam, and that's how you're here today. So like I think that's beautiful, and I'm selfishly happy that happened.
Sure.
Second thing, obviously the second half of the keep going moment. I think when you make that jump as a coach, I did the same thing. I went from the high school travel ball level to the college level very young, like you did. Goodness, is it scary? And I feel so happy I did because it set my whole life up. I'd never meet my fiance without that. I never get to go, I don't know, coaching college and be in this facility I'm at right now. When you made that leap, you mentioned other people helped you. Shout them out.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of waiting for me to say it, but Matt Say, he was a strength and conditioning coach when I was an athlete at Benue, and then I got to work under him when I was a coach there. He is at Illinois College now, so he's a little bit farther.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
D3 still. D3 still. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a lot for me when I was a student athlete. He was the person for me to be like, "Yo, I hear you, I see you. Like, I know you're dealing with some stuff. Like, I'm here for you." I used to walk into the weight room and the second I saw him, I would just burst into tears. Like, he was one of those comfort person or people for me. And not only did he play a huge role in like getting me through college, but also like reminding me that I'm in the right field and reminding me that I am a good coach and I'm knowledgeable. Um, so yeah, I was working for him at the time, and he was actually the reason I took the job at COD. He went out of his way and went and talked to my current boss and was like, "You need to go apply for this job. It's a good job. It's with good people." So he was kind of the one to push me. And then your brother as well. I mean, if you know Adam O'Malley, you know that he's one of the most positive people in the whole world. Sometimes he'll walk into a room with the biggest smile on your face, and it's annoying almost because you're like, dude, like, how are you always this positive? But then once you're around him more often, it's like, okay, if he can be this happy all the time, like I can definitely do it too. It rubs off. Um, so yeah, like when I was taking the job at COD, Matt Say and your brother were two of my biggest supporters. Like, hey, we're gonna miss you a whole bunch, but like you have to go. It's the next step in your career. Everyone there will love you. Like, stop being comfortable where you are. So I think obviously outside of my family and all my friends, those two played a really big role.
Yeah, I can't speak for your coach. I can't speak for Matt, but with Adam, I know that feeling. Adam's obviously a huge part of my life. It's fun fact. Adam's the biggest episode we've ever had, and we've had Super Bowl champions, Olympians, like anything under the sun in 100+ episodes. And Adam's episode was amazing. It's because who he is. It's just who he is, and I think it comes a lot from my mom. My mom was a big part of it. I try to be the same. I try to walk in rooms, and it's like, let's see who we can really impact today. And I think that's something that if you're listening and you're not walking into rooms where people feel like you value them, you might want to change up your approach.
Mhm.
Honestly, because life's too short. Go in there, try to make an impact, and do it the right way. Because some days Adam would walk in, or I'd walk in the room with him, and he's having a tough day, and that can kind of get you back to neutral and kind of get back to where we should be. So I love that. I'm glad you talked about that, and shout out Adam, man. That's my guy, obviously. So it's all good. All right, so I want to go rapid fire questions here to wrap up the pod today.
Go.
First one, you mentioned a couple coaches already. Let's stay with the love kind of train here. Talk about someone that inspires you, because I know you have some significant others, some family members you probably should shout out.
Yeah, for sure. First one off my bat is obviously my mom, my parents, my older brother. They're my biggest fans. They always have been. Never missed a soccer game in college. So yeah, just like my immediate family, but also my aunt. I mentioned to you earlier that I'm actually at her house right now.
Love
She,
it. Podcast
yeah,
official. Here we go.
yes. She just carries herself with so much grace. We usually call her Saint Aunt Kim because she is just a saint on earth. Um, so yeah, she's one that is definitely super inspiring to me, and just the way she carries herself and brings me back to center. I can always call her if I need to, and she brings me back and tells me to pray about it and tells me that it's all going to work out. So she's a big one for sure in my life.
Okay, let's parlay that. I didn't think we were going here, but talk about the faith side of things. Is that someone that's prevalent in your life? Is it something that the family's always been about?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up going to a private school. I went to a Catholic school growing up. Went to church every single Sunday. And I will say, and I when I went to high school and college, I kind of got away from it. I didn't go to church as often, but it's definitely something that I think a lot about, and I try to bring into my life more often. I know I can be better with it, but I'm trying to get back into my faith and lean into it a little bit more. So yeah, working on it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I did the same thing. I went to Catholic school growing up, and in my 20s, I got away from it, and now I'm just trying to. And that was one of my goals in 2025 with this podcast. Like, let's see who's kind of a believer and like what they're kind of going through. I think that could be a nice roadmap for a lot of the athletes and coaches that listen. Awesome. Third thing, here's a random one. Okay, as a former college athlete, and I ask this all the time, you guys get a big win. Where are we stopping on the road for food if you get to pick?
Um, well, D3 life, it was never anything glamorous.
Oh,
Um,
don't even say it. We got the Ritz. Trust me. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think post game our treat was like Chipotle. That was like the one that we were excited for, right? We ate Jimmy John's just about every day on our way to games. But yeah, like sometimes we would get ice cream. We'd stop at McDonald's and could get an ice cream cone. That was like our big exciting thing.
That's big in the D3 world. Big.
Yeah, so extra little ice cream cone at the end of a game was our big excitement.
No, I love it, Steph. Last thing I'd ask, and this is more of a 2025 goal of mine too. We have a lot of athletes that tune in and they send DMs and they come up to me in person. And they go, Pat, I'm struggling a bunch and I need some help. If there's an athlete that's sitting here and going, this Steph girl is amazing, I need to hear what she has to say. Athlete struggling, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, like I see you and I hear you. I'm here for you. I'm here to talk. I'm just a strength and conditioning coach, so I will listen and do my best. But I think something that's really important is like always offering to send to the next person, right? If they need to go talk to like a sports psych or a therapist or someone that maybe has a more similar story, it's fine the people that will see you and will hear you. And if you don't find them, keep looking because someone's out there that will be a good support system for you, whether it be within your sport or outside of sport. There's always someone, whether it be someone online or a family member or a coach or a friend. Keep looking for the person that you can really lean on.
We got to cap it there. That Steph, you are an amazing soul. You are a barrier breaker, stigma breaker. You're a great friend, family member, coach, and just an overall person that people can lean on. And I admire the work that you've put in your field. And I'm having a fiance that went through the student athlete life and went through some of the mental health stuff. Everybody needs a Steph Nichols in your life. So I love you for that. And I really appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. That means a lot.
Always. Well, keep going. Have a great rest of your Sunday. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, Pat.